Chicken pot pie is one of Megan Kaye's favorite meals, which means through the transitive property, it's gotta be one of my favorites as well. Chicken pot pie is a classic American comfort food type of meal. We're talking gravy with vegetables and chicken, all in a nice flaky, crunchy crust. MK's favorite part is easily the top crunchy, crispy crust, but she absolutely hates soggy bottoms. So I built this recipe with that in mind, and it's much easier to make because of it. Let me show you how to make it. To prep for this, it's the classic mirepoix used to flavor so many long-cooked dishes. That means we'll be peeling and dicing 4 carrots. I like a lot of carrots in this. 2 large stalks of celery and 2 yellow onions. It's important to keep the diced onions separate from the other veggies here as they're gonna cook at different times. This combination of vegetables will bring a base note of vegetal sweetness to the dish. This is really important for the most delicious pot pie. White meat is the standard option, but you know what white meat does when it's cooked for long periods? It turns to chalk. So with that in mind, let's use chicken thigh. About 1.5 pounds of them, just a large pack from the store. These turn beautifully tender and luscious in the gravy while the pie bakes. At the stove, we can start heating a Dutch oven or large pot over medium-high. Once hot, add in a touch of cooking oil and drop in those chicken thighs. Be sure to season them with salt before they go in. There's a really good opportunity here to brown these deeply, so just let them sit and enjoy the time in the pan. After about 5 to 7 minutes, the first side should look like this. It's brown and crusty and delicious looking. At this point, I just take the chicken out of the pan because it's gonna have plenty of time to cook in the gravy. I don't even bother trying to brown the other side. Turn the heat down to medium and take a second to look at the pan right now. All of those little bits of chicken fat have browned and are gonna be super tasty, but we need to lift them from the pan before they burn. To do so, we'll add the onions and a large pat of butter, basically like a tablespoon. There should be enough liquid in this to scrape up the fond. If the brown bits aren't coming up, feel free to add a splash of water. This could be white wine if you had it, but I'm just gonna use water. I like to get my onions to around this point, nice and soft with a little brown color. This is why I don't like to use wine, because I'll add a large splash of white wine vinegar to cook out. Once the vinegar is completely gone, add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. The flour is gonna mix with the butter to form our roux, or the main thickening agent for the gravy. Roux are great for both flavor and thickening, but they have an inverse relationship. So the more thickening you want, the less flavor you'll get. And the opposite is true as well. The more flavor you want, the less thickening. Think of something like a gumbo with a dark chocolate roux. That has way less thickening power than a blonde roux like we're gonna use here. Now we can add 1 cup of milk in 2 stages. You wanna add it slowly at first because the flour can clump up if you don't mix it while it's hydrating. Good news is most lumps can cook out while the gravy cooks. So from there, once your milk is all incorporated, add 2 cups of chicken stock. Mix that together and then add in the celery and carrot. That chicken we browned earlier can be chopped into smaller pieces and added to the pot. For seasoning, add a few bay leaves tied with some thyme, a bunch of black pepper, and a pinch of salt to start. We're gonna have the opportunity to taste this before it goes in the oven, so no need to overdo it on salt now. Bring this up to a simmer while stirring and then drop the heat so it's just burbling. From there, we need about 30 minutes so the chicken will cook through, the veggies will become tender, and the gravy is gonna cook to a perfect consistency. Don't worry about covering this here. A little reduction is gonna be good for the final dish. So the 30 minutes are up and the sauce looks like this. Nice and thickened, but not too thick, and it's glossy from the butter and the chicken fat. This is a good time to turn the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now we can fish out the thyme and bay leaves, and we can taste this for salt. For me, mine needed a little bit more salt and pepper for my liking. I feel like with any American classic type dish, I like a lot of cracked pepper in it. If it's like gravy or chicken and dumplings, that kind of thing, I wanna see specks of pepper. I don't want it to look bland. We can turn off the heat here and just set it aside as we roll out the puff pastry. It's really simple. This is just a frozen piece of puff that's been sitting out to defrost. I literally just unroll it from the package once it's defrosted and set that aside. The mix has been cooling, so to finish it, I like to add a bunch of frozen peas, basically like 1 cup. These need to go at the end because they're already cooked, so they just need to warm through. If they cook for too long, they just lose all their color and look sort of that like pale green. Not super appetizing looking. Give that a mix and then add it to a cast iron or pie pan, or it could be a casserole dish. Whatever you have is gonna work. Lay the puff pastry over the top and then cut anything off that hangs over too far. I like to make just a few steam holes so any steam can escape and it's not gonna puff up too aggressively. For a nice brown crust, I'll add a little milk wash. Just whole milk brushed on the top works really nicely here. Sprinkle on some flaky salt so the crust has a nice flavor, and that can go into the oven for around 40 minutes to get bubbly and crunchy. I place this on a sheet tray so it doesn't spill over into the oven. Do this if you hate cleaning your oven like I do. The only bit of work left to do is to rotate the pie every so often if it's browning unevenly. This is like 45 minutes, and this is where I like to take it. Super nice and brown, so MK can have as much crust as she likes. I know it's tempting to cut into it right away, but it needs some time to cool so the gravy doesn't just spill everywhere when you cut into it. the waiting is totally worth it. After it's cool, you can finally crack through that outer shell and enjoy all of that hard work. To me, this is comfort food at its finest, elevated with really, really good technique. I think dishes like pot pie sort of fell victim to that 90s style of pre-prepared, sort of like semi-homemade, but in the bad way, not in the good way. I think there's a lot of good that comes from semi-homemade type cooking. I do a ton of it. I ate chicken nuggets for lunch today. Like, I'm not opposed to that at all. I think what can happen though is the shortcuts we take for efficiency really can ruin a dish. And this is a dish that so much technique can go into it to make it really delicious. I really hope you make this version because it's incredibly delicious and you get a super flavorful gravy with a nice, crunchy, crispy crust. It's everything you want in a pot pie, and you're gonna be really, really happy you made it. Quick massive shout out to the amazing people supporting me directly on Patreon through patreon.com/CameronMarty. They get some cool benefits, and if you're in the mood to help support a creator like me, go ahead and check it out and consider becoming a patron. Now, if this is feeling like too much work for you and you just want something super quick and easy as like a midnight snack, go ahead and check out my bulldog carbonara recipe. It's incredibly delicious, and it takes like 7 minutes in total to cook, so check that one out. Thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and subscribe and like the video if this is your type of content. Cheers.